Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. With 3.15 and the Expedition League just around the corner, I wanted to outline a potential Leaguestart candidate for one of the new skills. Now this is going to be a Guardian that will be using the new skill Absolution. Absolution is a skill which I've done a little bit of a deep dive into the mechanics of. I'll put a link to that down in the description below. But it is a new skill that's being added. It is a small area of effect skill that causes lightning damage in an area of the ground. That damage is actually physical damage, 50% converted to lightning. And this build will be 100% converting it through the use of the physical to lightning support gem. Then, in addition to that, any monster that is killed by it, or with at a percentage chance, any unique enemy that is hit by it, will conjure a Sentinel of Absolution. These are minions you can have a maximum of 3 of. There is a possibility, although it's not yet known, whether there's a helm enchant that allows you to have an additional one. And these Sentinels of Absolution then also cast Absolution for you, targeting enemies of their choice. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on our own casting, but we're going to do so using some of the Guardian Ascendancy's abilities that will actually enable you to also indirectly buff the minions. So the minions should do okay damage while you're doing most of the damage that the character does. So let's have a quick look through some of the notes that I've made here. But just firstly, a very important disclaimer, League starting a new skill is always risky. Sometimes new skills just have bad mechanics. Sometimes the AoE is too small. Sometimes there's other flaws that aren't really apparent until you've played them through to the end. So ultimately, this is going to be a little bit of a gamble. Everything is a bit of a gamble in 3.15. It's a totally new meta. All of the new mechanics in the game mean, and all of the changes to support gems and the like, mean that a lot of old build guides won't be guaranteed to work. But I think you can say that this is slightly riskier than taking a 3.14 build and just sanity checking it to make sure that the 3.15 changes don't kill it. So, you've been warned, but if you want to start a new skill, I think this one could be okay. So firstly, I think the Guardian looks like a strong option. Auras affect this build a lot. You're going to have a lot of damage coming from the Wrath aura. Additionally, you've got Herald of Purity providing considerable additional support by being another big multiplier for all of your damage. So the inherent minion support of the Guardian Ascendancy looks good. Other options could be viable. I've chosen to go Guardian. If you want to adapt this build for a different Ascendancy, go ahead. The Assassin definitely has some potential, I believe, as a critical strike version of this build. An Assassin would look completely different. You'd be using a Void Battery in each hand, you'd be using a Badge of the Brotherhood, and you would be stacking power charges, and then looking for as much other damage as you can get along those sorts of lines. But that's a different build entirely. As far as the gearing that you're going to go for, most of your gear is going to be focused on raising the gem levels of physical or lightning or strength skills. So you would be using, for example, your sort of dream caster weapon would be a scepter that has +1 to the level of all spell skills, the Magister's affix, +1 to the level of all physical skill gems, which is the Lithomancer's affix, and then some sort of other useful caster modifier as the third prefix, alongside good suffixes. You can use minion items, you can use lightning items, you can use physical items. Until you can get yourself a +2 to the level of socketed gems, +2 to the level of all gems scepter, you can use +1 ones as well. Don't use Cold Iron Point. A lot of people were asking me this in the stream that I was doing on this. We're going to be doing purely lightning damage, and Cold Iron Point will remove all of your damage. A couple of other options though at endgame. You could use the unique weapon Cerberus Limb and Aegis Aurora, the unique shield. This is not League Start friendly due to Aegis Aurora being a chase item at League Start. It's the same rarity tier as Chevron's Wrappings. But Cerberus Limb is pretty easy to get your hands on in softcore, and is a genuinely really good item. It does a lot in conjunction with Aegis Aurora to make you very, very durable, as well as providing you with a bunch of other support. So that's a good setup that you can use. If you're doing that, you want to modify the tree slightly to pick up glancing blows, I believe, although I'll leave that decision up to you. Your second option is to revolutionize the build with Prism Guardian. This would entail shifting all of the focus on life into Energy Shield, and this would be a totally different build, but could be quite good. The other weapon that you might want to consider is Mjolnir. Mjolnir is another pretty rare item. I'm not suggesting this for League Start. These are sort of endgame options to adapt the build later. So let's talk firstly mana reservations. Your first option is to use Wrath with no supports, and to use Herald of Purity with either no supports or with Blind. You may also want to use Veil Clarity, which is something that we'll come to when we're talking about mana. Probably if you're doing that, you don't actually turn clarity on, or if you do, you keep it at gem level 1. But you would have Val Clarity, could be at higher level, because Val Clarity is really good at higher gem level. So what this gives you, Wrath is a 21% more damage multiplier at high gem level. Herald of Purity is a 15% more damage multiplier. And the Wrath benefit applies to Sentinels as well. If you don't use Blind, this is a 75% mana reservation, 80% with Blind. Option 2 is to get rid of Wrath and use the Coming Calamity unique chess piece with a 6-link Herald of Purity and a 4-link Herald of Lightning. I'm going to leave this as an endgame option. I'm not going to assume that you do this for the rest of the guide. It would be a quite different build then, but I think it could be a very good setup. Zealotry seems inferior to Wrath, but it might work well in a Prism Guardian setup. So you might use Zealotry as well. So for Absolution, most builds in the past in Path of Exile have focused on having a 6-link chess piece that has their primary skill in it. We're actually going to do something a bit different here. The reason for this is that with all of the changes that are happening in 3.15, there's a significant nerf that's coming to the inherent benefits of each additional link that you can get. And I think it's now more important than ever to focus on getting alternative sources of multiplying damage that are not additional links. So we're going to start by going with a 4-link. We're going to have Absolution linked to Physical to Lightning, linked to Spell Echo, and linked to Lightning Penetration. This is going to be in a helmet, and we're using a helmet because of 2 specific mods that we can roll. Firstly, there is the Essence exclusive mod, and I will confirm in the description of the video below which Essence it is. I think it's the Essence of Horror, but don't take my word for it. It'll be in the description below. And this provides 30% more damage to more elemental damage to socketed gems. So we're using that. We're also going to try to hit that in conjunction with +2 or +3 to the level of all socketed minion gems. So I have created in the path of building that is also going to be linked in the description of the video below. I have created a sort of various templates as to the sort of helm you might want to use as you progress through the game. So I've got what I consider to be a realistic level 75 helmet, and I will just quickly show you what that looks like now. So this is the realistic level 75 helmet. It is +2 to the level of socketed minion gems, a high tier life roll, a high tier lightning, and a high tier fire roll. Realistic level 85 helmet, +3 minions. Socketed gems are supported by level 18 Innovate, which is a huge buff to damage, but also does increase your mana pressure. 66 to maximum life, 29% lightning resistance, and also there's the effective lightning ailments, which sort of comes for free with the Innovate mod. And then there's a very top end helmet. You might not be able to get this. This has the other Essence exclusive mod. This one might be an Essence of Insanity. Again, I will confirm that in the description below. Socketed gems gain 50% of physical damage added as extra lightning damage. +3 to socketed minion gems. Maven elevated socketed gems are supported by level 25 Innovate. +99 to maximum life and 20% increased effective lightning ailments. That's going to be really difficult to roll, and probably realistically you're going to settle for something between these two. But I will, if I do end up playing this build, I will post a crafting guide later as to exactly how you would make this. It would be a craft that would begin using faceted fossils, glyphic fossils, and metallic fossils. You'd be trying to get the suffixes first. And so once you've got socketed gems supported by level 20 Innovate, as well as the Essence modifier, you would then at that point try to elevate that modifier. And then if you're successful in elevating it, then at that point you would try and roll the prefixes using Harvest. So that would be a big endgame goal, but that's something that we can come to at a later stage. So that will be your primary link. Once more, it's in the helmet, not the chest piece, because mana is really tight on 6 links in the game at the moment. And also because you can get as much power in the helmet nowadays as you can in a chest piece. At least for this build. At least for a build where you are casting a spell that is also a minion gem. So we're going to be linking it to Spell Echo because I believe, and I need to test this in game once we have Absolution, that Spell Echo works on Absolution, but that Spell Cascade does not. If it turns out that Spell Cascade does, and by work I mean that when you cast Absolution, you get the benefits of Spell Cascade, and also when your minions cast Absolution, they also get the benefits of Spell Cascade, then you're going to want to use Awakened Spell Cascade eventually, and possibly Spell Cascade in the interim. So, as well as that, there's other gem slots. I'm just going to make some suggestions here. I think that Smite linked to Fortify, linked to faster attacks, or Ancestral Call linked to increased duration is a good setup to have in a 4-link. That can be in your chest, that can be in your gloves or your boots, doesn't really matter. If you're gem constrained, then cut down on these supports. There's going to be a fair amount of armor gear, most likely, because you're a Templar. So for that reason, cast when damage taken, Molten Shell is worth considering. But you may also use manually cast Molten Shell, or you may find that Steel Skin is a better option. Cast when damage taken Steel Skin costs a fair bit of mana now. It's not a tremendous amount, but if you're under real mana pressure, you might find that sometimes your cast when damage should proc, but your Steel Skin doesn't go off because of the new setup. So I wouldn't use cast when damage taken that's heavily linked, I don't think. Gotta kind of mess around with that. That's the sort of thing we can't say for certain now. Next, we have Wave of Conviction linked to Physical to Lightning, linked to Hex Touch, linked to Conductivity. This is something that will grant considerable additional damage against heavier targets. For move skill, we're going to use Flame Dash or Lightning Warp or Frost Blink. Flame Dash is being nerfed and may not be better than the other skills anymore, but this is just going to take some experimentation to find out. If you're using Frost Blink or if you're using Frost Blink or Flame Dash, you could use it in the unique ring Malachai's Artifice, and that will be something that will provide you with a considerable boost to damage because it will enable you to debuff enemies lightning resistance by virtue of your movement skill. However, a very important caveat is that if you are using Malachai's Artifice, then you need to avoid all sources of flat lightning damage to spells on all of your gear. So that's going to be a little bit of a puzzle for you to work out as to which option is better. For Cluster Jewels, there are a number of options that you've got. I haven't put any Cluster Jewels onto this tree at the moment because this is a template and no plan survives first contact with the enemy. However, I did go through all of the Cluster Jewel possibilities and I want to outline what I think is good. Minion Herald medium clusters are the best option, I think, and you would want to be using a four passive one. So not the 6 passive ones. You want to be using the 4 passive ones. You can use a 5 passive one. They're going to be equivalent to the 4 passives. You don't want to take the small nodes. If you have to take one, it's not the end of the world. But you want to avoid pathing through those if you can. So Disciples and Cult Leader are the best roles that you can get there, and they're actually both very common roles. Heraldry is good if you choose to go the Coming Calamity approach. For large cluster jewels, so Lightning 8 passive ones are the best choice here, with Lightning 9 as the sort of budget alternative. Minion 8 and Elemental 8 offer very little, and also Minion 8 ones tend to be pretty expensive. So your options here, if you want to go for a slightly differing the build, changing the build up quite a bit, you could use one Call of the Brotherhood and use the Cluster Jewel node Snowstorm, which is really strong. This will change the damage you're doing so that you're doing you're doing a bit of both lightning and cold damage, but Snowstorm is really strong on a build like that. You could use Storm Drinker if you are using Energy Shield. For life builds, I don't think you want to go that way. But it'd be really good if you go Prism Guardian. Inspired Oppression is really solid. Supercharge is solid. Overshock is solid. Don't worry about the 60% ability to get to 60% shock intensity. You won't get there. It's just a 30% increase to shock intensity alongside 30% increased lightning damage is really good. Tempt the Storm is really good, but Supercharge is amazing because we are not scaling critical strikes here, so we're often not going to crit. Okay, so Tempt the Storm is a very good option as well, and you are guaranteed to hit it if you use Reforged Speed from Harvest on any of your large Lightning 8 clusters. So lots of options there. I'm not going to make an absolutely certain recommendation here. This is the sort of thing that if I do end up playing this build, I will come back with my findings on what works. These are just things that I think might be good. Lastly, small cluster jewels. I think you really need additional life on this tree, and so three passive life nodes look really good. You might alternately consider Chaos Resistance. I'm going to leave that decision up to you. Chess piece. We had a look through on my stream through every possible option that you could have here. And there's a few pure defensive options: Creacian's Carapace, Replica Farrell's Fur, which is expensive, Calm's Heart, Doppelganger Guise, and on a budget, Restless Ward. Shadow Stitch came to mind as the best pure defensive one. Shadow Stitch is a chess piece that I did a guide on a while ago. It's something that I'll put a link to below. It's a really cool chess piece everyone forgets existed, and it comes from Elva's Corruption Chamber. You will need to be able to beat Atsuri and also acquire a Corruption Chamber to have a chance of getting Shadow Stitch, because the only way to get it is by taking a sacrificial garb, unique item that special crafting base that drops from Hatsuri, applying a scouring orb to it, and then when it is a white item, using the 2 Implicit Corruption Chamber on it. You'll then have a 1 in 4 chance to turn it into a 6-link Shadow Stitch, and that's something that can be a fairly good choice because it just has a lot of good mods on it. Otherwise, from a damage projection or pure offense option, you have Impulses. Broken Heart is really good. Cosbury's Will, Skin of the Loyal is an option, although it will be tough for mana. Sakawal's Chess Piece, Sakawal's Nest, is really solid, but will probably require additional investment into mana reservation. If you do go the Sakawal's path, then you'll need to craft Aspect of the Avian somewhere, and if you do that, then you'll also need to reserve 35% of your mana for Aspect of the Avian. But if you can manage all of that, then you will find that all of your minions get a 20% chance to deal double damage and 20% move speed all the time. So that's really strong. Okay, so Hybrid Carcass Jack is a really good option, and it's actually what I'm going to recommend. It provides defense and offense in one package, and it deals with one of the biggest problems on the build, which is area of effect. Loreweave is solid too. Duresso's Defiance looks really good. Expedition's End is an interesting option because it enables Cluster Jewel. It enables some of the Cold/Lightning Cluster Jewel shenanigans. And Replica Shroud of the Lightless is a very high budget, very powerful item that you could conceivably use as well. A really advanced option, and this is only an option if Mahaxidal's Machination is available in this league, which we do not know whether it will be or not. That's one of the Trailmaster uniques. Is to use it in conjunction with Doriani's Prototype and the Karui Timeless Jewel. This may not be possible, but it could be very good as it can massively debuff the lightning resistance of all of the enemies you fight. Ivory Tower is another option for low life. This would probably go in conjunction with Prism Guardian and would require you to respec around your Guardian passives. So start out with Carcass Jack, but that's my thoughts on where you want to go from that perspective. Let's have a look at the passive tree now and discuss quickly some of the choices that have been made here. Again, not promising that this is perfect, but it should be good enough to be functional. So Harmony of Purpose is a flex node. I like this node. A lot of people don't. If you don't like it, feel free to take a Bastion of Hope or Radiant Faith instead. But the core of the build is Radiant Crusade. This is giving you, when you've got at least 5 nearby allies, you and your nearby allies have Onslaught. You will have this a lot because Herald of Purity is creating minions, as is your Absolution. When there is at least 1 nearby ally, you and nearby allies deal 10% more damage. So 10% more damage is great. Onslaught is even better, and you're getting 20% elemental resistances. This is a fantastic node. Unwavering Crusade isn't quite as good, but is still worth taking. Nearby allies have 20% increased attack, cast, and movement speed, area of effect. They unnerve enemies for 4 seconds on hit. Unnerved enemies take 10% more damage from spells, so that's really strong. This is a definite one to take. Lastly, Time of Need. 80% reduced effect of curses on you is fantastic. It's no longer possible to trivialize curses with a Warding Flask. And also, you just randomly regenerate a lot of life with it. This is going to keep you alive from incidental damage. You're not going to die to incidental damage, and you're not going to need a slow life flask with Time of Need. That will just sometimes keep you alive. So that's what we're taking out of the Guardian. This is core. Radiant Crusade, Unwavering Crusade, and Time of Need are core. Harmony of Purpose is a flex slot that you can change around as much as you want, but I think the other ones are pretty important. So we're starting out, we're coming through the minion and physical damage nodes. We're taking Retribution. We are taking something that's a bit strange here. We're taking the entirety of the Amplify cluster. We don't actually need all of these nodes for pathing. The thing is that I consider 10% increased area effect so good that it's worth a passive, even though you could still remain connected without it. We're taking these just general good stuff nodes. Life here, Discipline and Training, is one of the best nodes on the tree. Sanctity is really good too. Good stuff nodes, we're taking Tireless for some life and reducing mana cost of skills. We're coming through the life nodes here and taking the entirety of the Templar Elemental Wheel, with the exception of just the 2 lowest power points on it. The reason we're taking the Fire node, this may not be clear, but it's 12% increased physical damage, and it also has 5% of physical added as extra fire. That's not really great for us, but it's still okay. So I'm still confident that these are good points. These points, however, you may not want to take early on. Lastly, this causes 25% conversion of physical to fire, but that is only for fire spells. Absolution is not a fire spell. We wouldn't want that, but we're not going to get it. We're taking the Spiritual Aid cluster from the bottom, which I think is worthwhile because it gives us so many more flexibility. Yeah, it gives us so much more flexibility in gear choices. And again, we're taking just a general good stuff node in Faith and Steel. Faith and Steel is probably one of the least important nodes on this tree. You can certainly skip it if you are tight on points, but you'll probably want it while you're leveling just for the elemental resistances. You can spec out of it later. We're taking the whole Purity of Flesh cluster because Chaos Resistance has just been getting more important in the game lately. And you'll notice that we come past a cluster jewel socket here, so that's something you can spec into if you need it later. Fearsome Force is just good enough and also amps up our damage because of Spiritual Aid. We're taking a few minion clusters because of the way Absolution works, and Spiritual Aid means that this is also giving us 10% increased damage. We don't get the area of effect that the minions get, but we do get the damage. Here, this node gives me 6% damage. It also gives my minions 6% damage and 12% area, which is all good. We're taking Elemental Overload. We are going to incidentally crit occasionally, especially given that we will often have 3 power charges by virtue of Harmony of Purpose. This is going to mean that we will have Elemental Overload proccing semi-often, and it should have a very high uptime. I think if we're standing still and casting, we're probably going to be looking at 85-90% uptime on Elemental Overload, and that just makes it one of the best nodes on the whole tree. We're then coming into the Witch area, taking some good life, and then we take this entire area cluster again, come down, grab these defensive nodes down the bottom. Lightning Walker's okay, you may or may not decide to take it, and we'll take 2 points down in practical application because you've got to get stats somewhere. Lastly, we're taking Discord Artisan because it's a really good node, given that we have, given that this is going to cause us to get 15% increased damage, 10% reduced reservation, which means that we can fit blind if we want to, and makes mana a little bit more comfortable. And also, Herald buffs are really strong. These Herald buff nodes are going to be between them a 3% more multiplier for all of our damage, which is fantastic to see. We then have the option of either taking Heart of Thunder and Breath of Lightning, or taking one or the other, or investing remaining points in Cluster Jewels. And ultimately, at the very end game, we can take both, or we can go for 2 lots of Cluster Jewels. So that is where I am planning to start. From a Bandit's perspective, I think you probably want to help Alira early on because mana is going to be tight while leveling, and additionally because the resistances will help you with gearing. But ultimately, you're going to want to respec to helping Eramir, which is killing all bandits. You can do that at endgame when you can afford the fee of 20 Regret Orbs and an Onyx Amulet. So if you're not familiar with how to respec your bandits, all you need to do is vendor 20 Regret Orbs plus any Onyx Amulet, and you will receive a Book of Remorse, and that will then change your bandit affiliation away from Alira to Eramir. If you want to change to one of the other bandits, you need to use a different stat amulet instead of an Onyx. Okay, so I think that's basically everything. I will put all of my notes from this video into the video description below. If you've got comments or questions, definitely let me know. Once more, this is not finalized, and whilst the Path of Building will be online, it's incomplete. It doesn't have full gear because I just don't know exactly what the game is going to throw at us. I need to experiment with this in practice before it's an absolute final product. But this should give you enough information to get started, I think. If you've got comments or questions, fire away. Otherwise, leaving it there. Hope you have fun, and may your Varlorbs have interesting results.